So delighted to be joined by Kevin McStay. We're going to preview the 2020 Football Championship. Kevin, I suppose like everyone else now, you're looking forward to the weekend's action.
Very much so, Gary. Yeah, it's I was saying to you earlier, it's a case now the ball is in and the game is on, and the hope is that we get from weekend to weekend without the whole thing exploding. And so far, so good. So far, so good. The hurling championship is obviously up and running since last weekend, and there was two very big weekends, round 6 and round 7 of the leagues, which kind of road tested what they're trying to do for the championship in terms of the hosting of the games and the playing of the games, and that all went very, very well. But then I was watching my Twitter feed. It was last night or this morning, I'm not sure which, but anyway, to see that one of the Tyrone squad has COVID-19. And we don't know who that is, obviously, but supposing it's a very important player and supposing there are other close contacts involved, all of a sudden then the game becomes secondary. Do you know what I mean? And Tyrone might lose some of their key influences, and then the kind of game loses a bit of its sparkle, if you like. So hopefully that's not the case, because what I'm doing on Sunday, I'm being selfish now, of course, I want to see two full strength teams is Donegal and Tyrone up in Ballybofey. So, and then week all the way up to Christmas week. So for my lockdown, Dara, I cannot complain. Can I really? Now I'm out of the house every weekend, and I'm heading towards a big championship match somewhere on the island, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, you mentioned the COVID cases. Obviously, a lot of counties have had some sort of, whether it be close contact or a positive case. We've even seen in the county we're in, Roscommon had a whole bus taken out, but they still managed to get the win. It's nearly like you really need a strong panel this year.
Yeah, the only add-on I'd put to that, Dara, is that, Roscommon get a bus taken out the next time with, 12 or 10 or 12 of them. You wouldn't survive in a serious championship match missing that amount of top players, obviously. And in fairness to the Rossies, most of the work was done in round 6 anyway. So there was a bit of a safety net there, even though it was an excellent performance to beat Cavan. But no team can afford to lose 3, 4, 5 of their top players and expect to win championship matches. It'd be highly, highly unlikely. So fingers crossed that won't be part of any equation coming into any of the big games that we're looking forward to.
Back in May when I had you on, we kind of discussed the behind closed doors argument, and you said at that particular time, you said you wouldn't get the same standards, you wouldn't get the same buy-in, it just wouldn't work because we players go off passion, and if you were a player or manager, you'd have no interest. So have you changed your tune on that?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that the things we said back in March and April can make us look quite foolish 4 or 5 months down the line when you're starving for action, and I suppose at the time part of my opinion was based on stuff coming from Croke Park that I was watching closely, where essentially the president, and if I remember rightly, the Irish juror said that they would have no appetite for games behind closed doors. I think that was generally, I think I'm quoting him reasonably okay, and that kind of rung with me as well, behind closed doors would be a weird kind of a situation, really. But you see, the human condition, this is what makes us the great survivors. We can adapt to anything. And matches on TV, matches that are streamed. I watched a lot of streamed games all summer, club games. The sports fan is just a junkie. He'll watch anything that he can get his hands on. Obviously, I'm getting to the games in the role as a co-commentator, so I'm actually in the grounds, which is even better again. For a player and for a manager, it has to be surreal on a few levels, Dara. It has to be the prep, the travel to the game. There's no hotels pretty much involved now, or certainly not meetings and hanging out the morning of a championship match with your group in the hotel. The bus is gone. You're driving in cars on your own. Even the match day experience, certainly at club level, there's a lot of them togging out up in the stands. I know the dressing rooms are open to the senior game now, but it's not the same. In terms of even celebration of a great score or a close match, it's not the same. But it's the best. It's the best we have. So, yeah, I hear exactly what I said back in March or April, but I'm very happy to say I've got over that and moved on. I suppose, like most of us, if this changed, this was such a dynamic situation. Just literally, I was going to say week to week, but it was changing nearly day to day. But very happy to be where we are now, with the prospect of a championship ahead of us, and there's a real prospect now. I think most people have figured out how these games can go ahead. The only thing that will take it down is a COVID outbreak, a serious COVID outbreak in 2 or 3 of the major teams, like a Dublin or Kerry, if they were sidelined, because as you'll understand, there's no wriggle room in terms of the fixtures. You can't play next Sunday. If Donegal and Tyrone, for instance, couldn't play next Sunday, well, there's no room to get them ready for the following Sunday, because there's a week on. There's a couple of breaks here and there for some teams, but by and large, it's week on week. So, what I said at the beginning, and fingers crossed that it works out.
Yeah, and obviously we've just finished the league there with 2 weekends. What was the standard of football like in your opinion? Some good games, some probably games that dead rubbers, which is natural enough going into the last weekend. What did you make of it?
Yeah, well, Division 2 was unreal. I mean, at any one time over the concluding weeks, there was, I think, 7 teams had an interest in how the game went, whether that was going up or going down. And some of the teams had an interest in both going up or coming down. That's how finely balanced. You could throw a napkin over 6 or 7 of the teams on the table. So that was particularly keenly contested. And for Roscommon to come out on top of that was just an outstanding achievement. And come out with a bit to spare, almost, you'd say, in the end. It didn't feel like it at the time. The win away to Armagh was the significant performance of the season, I think, from a Roscommon point of view. And Armagh were the second best team, or maybe even the best team in that division. Like, Roscommon and Armagh are very closely matched. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And either team could have topped it. That game in the Athletic Grounds was a very strange game that Roscommon did brilliant to win, because I would have said on 2 occasions they kind of had lost the game, and the penalties each time, and I think that's going to be key in these winter games, because goals really will be vital now, and goals change games, and they destabilize the opposition in many respects, and Roscommon are particularly good at scoring goals. In fact, as a criticism, you might say they rely too much on scoring goals and not getting their points total as high as it might otherwise be. So that was Division 2. I enjoyed it. I thought there were some great games. I thought standard was quite good. Every bit as good as if we had a full normal league. Division 1 wasn't as high as it normally is. For whatever reason, the table positions didn't make it as keenly contested. And in the end, because Championship was rolling up a week later, Dara, I think a lot of teams said, no, Championship is where we want to be. So you saw a game like Donegal Kerry last week in Tralee, which was a joke, really, because Donegal essentially didn't travel. Well, you know what I mean by that. And they said Down and Louth was another match I was watching up north, and sure, Down didn't travel either, And a lot of teams had an eye on what was coming down the track, because, at the end of the day, Championship still remains the number 1 prize. And yes, there was some teams that had to stay at it. Certainly Mayo, as you know, and Tyrone had a keen interest in round 7. Kerry had an interest in round 7 to win the league. So there's an old adage. Certainly, I remember the older folks in my home club in Mayo, that if there's ever anything extraordinary or weird or daft going on in a season, put your money on Kerry or Kilkenny to win the titles. That they normally just, if there's a handy one or a daft one, not a handy one, that's the wrong word, but if there's an unusual one going, they tend to get them. And nothing has changed in either the hurling or football, in my mind, that they're the 2 teams that will win them, in fact. So, reasonable standard Division 1, very good standard Division 2, hugely contested Division 2, fairly well contested Division 1. Mayo, the big losers, obviously, losing their status after, over 2 decades in the league. And that's going to be tough on them now from lots of different points of view, the bringing forward of young players on a footballing side, on purely financial side, the servicing of debt. obviously it's better to be in Division 1. And so our own county where we're living currently are in a great position, because the Division 1 football, the non-travel has meant the whole squad is together for the first time in 2-3 years, and a very united squad, and they're all injury free. And because of the big draw last year, the Winner House draw, the funds are in pretty good shape, and there's another big Winner House draw coming up in December. And obviously the Rossies are in Division 1 and they're the kind of champions currently. So an awful lot to be happy about in that respect. So every chance now they'll give a huge account of themselves in this championship as well.
Yeah, before we actually move on to the provinces, obviously I've been watching the Sunday game the past 2 weekends, and one thing I think you picked up on, and Kieran Whelan, that the advanced mark, maybe it seemed a bit more prominent. Do you think teams are now really starting to take advantage of it?
Well, some teams for sure, yeah. And no, I don't have we're trying to track someone that has actually kept a record of it during just even these 2 matches, to try and get a sense of what the match average is. But we think it's about 3, somewhere around 2 or 3. Now, I don't have the evidence, so that could be, my eye test tells me it's about 2 or 3 per game. Yeah. And some teams are better at it than others. And the best teams at it will be the teams that have the best foot passers. And they tend to be the best teams, don't they? But also the coaching side of it, the emphasis put on it by the coaches will be important. And one of the things that came up, I don't know if you picked it up towards the end of our discussion on League Sunday, was that a lot of teams, Mayo, certainly, I see the Roscommon as well in their new defensive structure, and Kerry as well, are putting up a very strong line around the 45. You know, that's, I won't say it's the first contact area, because they like to push up a little bit of contact, maybe at 55, 60. But generally, there's the Maginot line, if you like, across the 45. And thou shalt not pass. The problem with that is that if you position a few good foot passers 10 meters back from the 45, it is not difficult to dink a 20-meter pass into the attacking zone. And that has very much been a tactic. And the top players like Clifford, Rian O'Neill that I was watching, Jeremy Murta, these top forwards, Aidan O'Shea perhaps even, Killian O'Connor, you'll see that if they get any chance of a mark, they'll take it, because they're going to be double teamed, treble teamed, and they won't get away from a treble team. So rather than try and develop an open score or a goal chance, they just take the mark. And a very interesting tactical one that I spotted last week, and I wasn't on the Sunday game, but obviously I was watching them, and I might get a chance to explore it further. You might have noticed the Roscommon 45s when they were just on the edge of too far for Donny. He'd shape up like he was taking them, run past the ball, and chip it back to a guy 13 meters away. So in other words, the ball is further away from the goal now. It's out now maybe at 60 meters. But the guy coming onto that ball has a great chance to dink a mark, because he's back into open play, obviously, so he can take the mark. And if you line up a good foot passer behind the likes of Donny, or if you even had Donny receiving the ball from, I don't know, Conor Cox taking the 45 or something like that, or any team that does it, this gives you a great chance. So there's a lot of ways that this can be developed, from free kicks, an open man outside the 45, take a quick free kick to him, and now the mark is back open again. You can't take a mark from set play. So a lot of tricking going to go on with it, and there's been time during the summer to think about it. And most teams are back 5-6 weeks now, maybe a bit more in some instances. So there's been time to practice it. The only issue I had with it was I counted maybe 10 marks around all the matches I was looking at week 1, and I'd say 4 of them were incorrectly awarded. The ball had not traveled 20 meters. Some of them, we lost one in the Armagh match. Roscommon lost one in the Armagh match where Rian O'Neill or Oisin O'Neill, I can't remember which, I think it was Oisin O'Neill, dinked one in to Rian O'Neill. He was only about 12 meters away from him. But the ref gave it because it kind of looks like a mark, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And he was very good. David Goff was the ref, and he got caught. But he awarded it, and obviously they kicked it over the bar. Now that happens with 2 minutes to go in the Ireland final. run because there'll be murder. So yeah, that was interesting to see. I think the mark certainly has potential. Excuse me. And I think a lot of teams, certainly the teams that are trying to make a breakthrough, say Monaghan, they'll zone in on it because they have Conor McManus. So they will want him to get on the mark and they'll want him to take it. They won't want him to take on the treble team or the double team. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I can see a lot of potential. Michael Murphy would be another one. Aidan O'Shea would be one. They're double treble team because of their ability and their size and power. So the easiest thing for them would be to take. Unfortunately, a lot of these marks are tummy high. They're not catching them over the head like everyone thought they would. So that was a little bit naive. I think the concept that this would bring back the great high jumping and catching again. No, I don't think so. But the mark will be a part of the championship, but it won't be the spectacular one that it was designed for. So the only thing you can say we'll get out of this mark is perhaps improved foot passing, but you won't get improved high catching.
Yeah, you even mentioned the refereeing there. Some refs will blow it when he catches the ball. I think you're meant to put the hand up to indicate you're taking the mark. I think Aidan O'Shea at the weekend took maybe a little run, saw he couldn't cut, and then he put the hand up. So it's going to be it's really on the ref how he interprets it.
Well, you see, again, that's always kind of a lazy GAA player's effort at not understanding a rule. The referees all interpret it differently. It's actually very clearly laid down. Any of the ones I've seen, I can see immediately why the referee either disallows it or otherwise. So the process is very simple. The referee signals it by blowing his whistle, but the player claims it. So the onus is on the player. The referee just signals it has traveled 20 and it has been caught clean. That's all he's signaling. He's not saying it's a mark. You're the person, the receiver is the guy who and he claims it by going up with his right hand within 4 steps. Now, I think Aidan went off on a bit of a run of 7 or 8 steps. I heard one of the lads saying, I didn't count them, I wasn't watching it that closely. He was a bit unlucky. But of course, what happened was exactly what I was describing. His instinct was to go because he'd normally score from there and take it on. But the next thing he realised, there's 2 or 3 Tyrone men around me. I'm treble teamed. I'll take my mark, but it was too late at that stage. So by and large, the only thing that would catch the referees out is the ball hasn't travelled 20 metres. I think that's where it's going to hurt them. I think in terms of indicating that it's a mark, the referees have been very good at it, I have to say. And they've been very good at implementing whether the player took it legitimately or not. The bit that it's going to fall down on, which was flagged from the day the rule came in, I know I certainly spoke about it on radio, is who's going to measure the 20 metres? It's a judgment call. And depending on whether the ball is going straight or diagonally, the judgment call becomes more difficult. So that's where the murder is going to be, because we have technology up in the Sunday game set that we can measure the distance the ball has travelled very easily. It's a very simple piece of work that one of my colleagues can do, and it makes a liar of us all instantly. Then that we've well, not a liar, that's the wrong word. It makes a fool of us all very quickly when you see. I'm going to plug in
to the provincial championships now. We'll start with Ulster. Usually people's, well, on paper, the most competitive. Monaghan and Cavan get underway Saturday. Now, a lot to be made of their tough run that they might have to win 4 games to win Ulster and the rest have to win 3. But when you look at the draw, the way it's set up for the likes of Monaghan, I think they'd much rather be on this side, because if whoever wins Monaghan Cavan play Antrim, and then the winners of that play Fermanagh Down. So really, you couldn't have hoped for a better draw in a lot of ways.
Well, you see, when I won't say a cliche, but when a narrative gets out about a place being so competitive and so hard to win, and then you look at it and you see that Tyrone and Donegal and Monaghan win it every year, no one else wins it. You wonder just how is it so competitive? So if the same 3 teams, and up until recently, it was only 2 teams. Monaghan are only late to the party. I think they have 2 titles in the last 20 years, and essentially bar down here and there. Tyrone and Donegal have completely dominated it. And you're right. You're absolutely correct in your analysis. The these championships, when you want to see what's going on, the first thing you do is get the draw in front of you. Because the happiest team in Ireland right now is Monaghan. Because they have a lovely run to the Ulster final if they do their business correctly and appropriately. If they're on their game, they're in an Ulster final. I have no doubt about that. And in the meantime, on the other side of the draw, Tyrone, Donegal and Armagh will be killing each other for the other slot. So by the time they get to an Ulster final, they'll be well shook. So Monaghan will be a very happy team, with the caveat, of course, that they must perform, because maybe that's the aspect of Ulster that can hurt you. If you don't perform on a given day and play to your ranking or your rating, the opponent can take you out. There's no doubt about that. But the match I'm going to on Sunday, Donegal versus Tyrone and Ballybofey, my sense is that the Ulster champion will come out of that match, and my sense very much is that it will be Donegal. They'll find it hard to beat Tyrone, but I think they will beat them, and they'll find it hard to beat Monaghan, but I think they will beat them. So I'm expecting to see Donegal come out of Ulster. I think they have a big pick, and they have a lot of very good footballers. And what I've seen in the league so far tells me they're fine. They're chugging along lovely. And Tyrone aren't bad either, but they don't have as many good footballers as Donegal have. So I'm expecting a tight game Sunday, but I'm expecting Donegal to emerge the winners and probably go on and reach that semi-final where they're going to be in great shape to play Dublin, because when we get to Dublin, it'll be fairly obvious that they're going to sail through to the Leinster final. I don't think they're playing anything higher than Division 2 team in the whole province. Well, okay, Meath have just been promoted, but other than that, there's no other Division 1 team in the province, and Meath aren't really a Division 1 team just yet. Meath went down, to Division 2.
Yeah.
So, no, there's no Division 1 team left in Leinster bar Dublin. Isn't that right? That is. Yeah. So, there you have two provinces wrapped up fairly fast, Dara. And Donegal will feel great about reaching that semi-final and feel confident about taking on Dublin, who they've given plenty of close runs to over the years anyway. Not beating them, of course, but being very competitive with them and well there. I'll dovetail into Leinster now and cover Leinster while I'm talking about it, because there isn't much to cover in it, Dara, really. Dublin will walk their side of the draw, walk it. But there's a great opportunity for Kildare Meath on the other side. And I fully expect that Meath will take that opportunity. And I expect them to be in that Leinster final. And I expect them to give a great account of themselves in that Leinster final. Not to win it, but to give a massive account of themselves. So it'll be a Dublin-Donegal semi-final, I'm thinking.
Yeah, and would you think possibly it was a mistake for Donegal to leave so many players out against Kerry? Tyrone bet Mayo, and at this stage, with not many games played, that a game could actually help your chances rather than a weekend off?
Okay, well, that's interesting now. So supposing this was the scenario now, what day is today? Today is Wednesday. Supposing Michael Murphy had pulled his hamstring last Saturday down in Kerry in a dead rubber. What would you think then about that decision?
Hindsight be a mistake, yeah.
That's it's lovely looking back saying, why didn't they go down and proud their team and couldn't they do it again with their legs? But you're increasing the chance in a competitive match. And then, of course, you'll say, but it couldn't happen at training. It's more controlled at training. Fellas will not take a fella out in training, the week of a champion match. It's just more controlled. And it's a huge spin. That journey is a serious journey. And for older players, to take you Tuesday or Wednesday to recover from a trip like that. So I think all in all, and they had very little to play for. I know there was a mathematical chance, actually, they could have won that league of all the other results, but it was, the probability of that happening was very, very small. So did they do the right thing? Absolutely did the right thing. Down did the same thing over in Louth, and so on. Because these games, by next Sunday, do you think anybody will be even thinking about Donegal versus Kerry down in Tralee last Saturday? Sure, not a chance. And also, it keeps Tyrone guessing a bit about what it is Donegal are going to do. In fact, if I looked at it carefully, I'd be saying, well, Jason McGee, Michael Langan, that type of player, Dara Boyle, a few of them, they all got another hour into their legs. And they could be the fellas that would be subs and coming on. So they were improving in terms of their match fitness. So I think for Donegal, it was a no-brainer. I think it puts them into a grand position for Sunday, whereas Tyrone, as you know, had to go down to McHale Park and fight for their lives. Now they got a great win, a very morale-boosting win, a significant victory against Mayo, because that was a full-on game. But when you look at it, it's a long journey. It was tough conditions. But over, I don't think they picked up any. Well, they did. Michael O'Neill got hurt, and that's an issue for Tyrone as well. I was just getting ready for Sunday. I'm noticing their midfield has been substituted in the last. Both midfielders have been substituted in their last two matches, so they're not fully convinced of what their best pairing is. I don't. In fact, I think Michael O'Neill might have been ill or something. He looked ill or something. He just didn't seem well, but I believe he's fine now. When they took him off, so he'll probably be okay. But they have to figure out a fair bit there at that midfield yet. They just haven't it fully figured out yet. And the loss of Colm Kavanagh might be a bigger loss than they think when it comes down to it. So to answer, that's a long way around now answering your question about Donegal going to Tralee. No issue at all.
Yeah, I suppose the player probably, everyone in the GAA is talking about at the moment is probably Conor McKenna coming back, the impact he's made already. I mean, Colin McShane is obviously a huge loss, but in terms of replacement, you won't get probably too many better.
Yeah, and I'll talk about him now in a second, but I want to match him off, Dara, with the great hope in Donegal. His opposite, free transfer, if you like, was the arrival back this season of Paddy McBrearty. Okay? But we haven't seen him. Like, people are talking about Paddy McBrearty as if he's on the Donegal team. Well, if you watch the selections and the squads, he didn't get near the place in round 6 or round 7, so we haven't seen him. And I don't know what the update is, but he's a marvellous player. Every bit as good as Conor McKenna, I've no doubt. And the McKenna influence has been so timely. It's funny, ironic almost, when you think of Mickey Hart's attitude to the Australian rules, that he just felt it was an absolute non-runner and still does, and strong convictions and fair play to him about the game and we losing players to the Aussie rules. And yes, here could be one of the best acquisitions he ever gets is Conor McKenna back from the Aussie rules. So you can see by his athleticism and build, he has really benefited from being in a professional environment. But before he left, he was a very good footballer. Anyway, minor level. I remember minor level. Very accomplished player. So it's no surprise to me that his arrival back to Tyrone meant he was going to be slotted in as quickly as possible once he had adjusted. But good footballers make these adjustments very quickly because he has lots of skill, lots of athleticism, and by all accounts, it's been seamless. He just came into training, stood out immediately, and kept standing out at all the sessions. Put him on the match. He scores 1-2, I think, on his debut or his return to Tyrone. Yeah, probably his debut. He wouldn't have played senior before he left. And what did he get? 2-2 or 2-3 last week. 2-2. Yeah. And the 2 goals were very decent, even though I'd be disappointed with David Clark for both of McKenna's goals. I'm sure he'd be disappointed himself. He was beaten on the near post for the second one. And the first one, he seemed to wrong foot him, like it wasn't a powerful shot. David nearly got his hand to it, but it slipped in. But yeah, McKenna has been a marvel for Tyrone and badly needed. Like, without him, they would not have stayed up. His contribution on the board, but his contribution, like, you remember the assist he gave Dara Canavan for the goal. That was a pass sliced over the top with a dip on it right into his pouch, and Canavan does what Canavans do and slotted it. And you might remember the week before, he was the assist for Darren McCurry's penalty. It was McKenna that was pushed in the large rectangle by the Donegal defender that gave Tyrone, that got Tyrone that goal at the time. So his hands are all over the performance, aren't they? His fingerprints are to be found everywhere, and he's been very, very good. He's been just what Mickey and Tyrone wanted at a time when, you know, the loss of Carl McStay was beginning to hurt them. So this only adds to the intrigue for Sunday.
Yeah, and then I suppose Donegal and Tyrone, as you said before, are the obvious ones, but could an Armagh pull a surprise and possibly win an Ulster?
They absolutely could, Dara. They absolutely could. I've been a fan of Armagh for 2 or 3 years, I suppose, especially because we played them in 2018. So I saw them up front of how dangerous they can be. Now, Ulster is a different scenario because the games are tighter, a little bit more turgid, if you like, and the setups are quite defensive. So Armagh are unlikely to get a loose running game going against any of these teams, but that doesn't mean they can't mix it either. They have a lot of very talented players. Grugan, the two O'Neills, you know, Rian O'Neill could be the next superstar of the game. You know, I would speak of him in nearly the same breath as David Clifford. Just David Clifford is getting way more exposure, obviously, because he's with the top 1 or 2 teams. You know, they'd be ranked 1 or 2 in the country. But Armagh are a slow build, as Armagh tend to be. Their last great team was a very slow build. I have huge respect for Kieran McGeeney and his management and what they're trying to do, and they've stuck at it. You know, he's there 5-6 years now at this stage, maybe more, and they are improving. Every year I see them, they're getting a bit better. So could they take out the winner of Donegal, Tyrone? Well, first and foremost, they're going to have to beat Derry.
Yeah,
and that's Derry trained by Rory Gallagher. So, you know, there'll be 19 behind the ball if he can get 19 behind it, and so that won't be simple. But I do expect Armagh to come through that. That's up in Celtic Park as well. It is, yeah. So that's going to add to it. But I do think Armagh are going to have a big say in the Ulster Championship, and by that I mean whoever beats them will have to play a lot of football. They'll have to really have performed, because Armagh, I have every sense, will perform in the championship.
Yeah. So your prediction for Ulster would be Donegal?
Donegal to beat Monaghan in a final, yeah.
Okay, so
but don't rule out Armagh taking out a Donegal or a Tyrone, yeah.
Then the other probably most competitive province in terms of who openness is Connacht. Mayo play Leitrim Sunday. Obviously we've just been relegated. 2 sort of mixed performances, you know, outstanding against Galway, and new players came in, probably poor for the first half against Tyrone, but a good second half performance. So what do you rate their chances like this year?
Well, I would rate Mayo as probably second favourites. Galway first, because they have the Sligo draw, so they're going to be in the final.
Yeah.
And Sligo unfortunately are going to pot. You know, they're falling away. I think they were the second or third from the bottom of Division 4.
Yeah.
Way down there. You know, not at the races at all. And you know, there's no good news coming out of the place at all. You know, there's no sense that they're going to rally or anything. And Leitrim are pretty much in the same boat too. You know, very disappointing that they didn't fulfill round 6. There were extenuating circumstances. I accept that. But you know, they're at a low ebb. And they have no chance against Mayo, none. So it's going to be a Mayo Roscommon semi-final out here in the Hyde. But Roscommon are in the top 3 in Connacht for the last 5 years now. They've been in every final. They've won 2 of them. They drew the 16 final. So they're there on merit. They're now in Division 1, you know, and have been in Division. This is their 3rd time in Division 1 in the last 5 years. So you can see how Roscommon are progressing. So they will be formidable at home here against Mayo. But I think Mayo are a little bit ahead of Roscommon still, even though Mayo went down and the Rossies went up. You know, And that's if I was managing either side. That's how I'd feel. If I was manager Roscommon, I feel we have it all to do. And if I was manager Mayo, I'd be thinking, if we get to our ability, we can win this match. Now, bear in mind, Roscommon have already beaten Mayo, so there'll be no fear there. So it's likely to be hugely competitive. And then waiting in the final will be Galway. And right now, I don't know what to make of Galway at the minute. All I know is from my time watching them since 2016, there was and I've always maintained this, there was a very good reason Kevin Walsh set up Galway defensively, because he was afraid of his life of the Galway defence, and it needed a lot of protection. And by times, you couldn't give it enough protection. Now, Pádraig has eased that a little bit for what I can see, but that's going to leave a lot of stress on those 6 defenders. And I'm not sure Galway have 6 good defenders. They're feeling their way around. They have a lot of people dropping back, but they haven't got their transition game polished at all at this stage. So putting Galway favourites to win Connacht, I put them favourites by virtue of the fact that they're on the other side of the draw. They're going to be in the final, whereas Mayo and Roscommon both have a big fence to jump each other, if you like. So there'll be no surprises for me who comes out of Mayo Roscommon. It's coin toss, slightly favouring Mayo, but not much. And Roscommon's ability to beat Mayo on any given Sunday, if you like, absolutely. There's no sense that there would be any sort of inferiority complex. And Roscommon's defence at the moment is playing very tight and very secure. My issue with the Rosties is that defence, which was required to tighten, has meant that their scoring averages have dropped. And to a large extent, the scoring average has been propped up by goals. And you can't really rely on goals in championship games. It's the point taking that tends to win the big championship matches. But goals are critical if you can get enough of them. But it just gets tougher as the championship goes on to score goals. So, yeah, that's kind of my 1, 2, 3. But kind of, even though it's 1, 2, 3 and it looks like a ranking, all 3 of them are pretty much even. Now, all 3 of them have certain abilities, but all 3 of them have certain questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, even from watching Roscommon, they probably won't be as confident as they've ever been going into a Connacht championship. Would you say that with a full panel, just winning promotions to Division 1 and Mayo going down as well? Galway have a few issues. Nate Comer's out for 6 weeks, possibly. I think that's what Pádraig Joyce said. So they'll fancy their chances.
Yeah, well, Comer's a huge loss. Comer is a huge loss because he's a very formidable footballer. He's horsepower strong, and he's very direct runner. So he draws frees, he scores goals, obviously because of that direct running. Yeah. The Rosties and their confidence levels correctly should be quite high because it's based on performance. They performed in Division 2. They performed last year in the Connacht Championship to such a degree that Roscommon won it. They had a good shot at the Super 8s. Like, what's forgotten, 2 things I'll say about Roscommon from the vantage point of knowing where we were when I finished up and where things have got to since, is that by the end of 2018, really, Roscommon had now got themselves re-established as a provincial champion team. Okay, so they were well up there with Mayo and Galway. They could take them out on a given day. 2019, Anthony and the team win it again. So the provincial championship is not a big deal now. Like the next focus for Roscommon, in my view, if I was involved with them, up on the blackboard I'd be putting, we need to get to an All-Ireland semi-final. That's where we need to get. Now, that last year, of course, would have been in the context of a Super 8s. That's not going to happen now. But the context here is winning Connacht in an All-Ireland semi. Now, you might think, or some people might think, hang on now, Roscommon aren't ready for an All-Ireland semi-final yet. Well, that's not true. And I'll cite two situations. The year we won Connacht in 2017, we had Mayo on the rack in that quarterfinal. At the beginning of the match, and at the end of the match. That's forgotten about. That we actually should have won that drawn match, but didn't. And if you look at the Super 8s last year, again, now trying to be fair about it, Roscommon got 2 points against Cork in round 3. But in round 2 out here, Roscommon had Tyrone at one stage of that game. The game was right there in the balance. Roscommon had the chances to move ahead and just failed to take it. And Tyrone ended up winning a tight enough game. Now, what's the point I'm making? 4 points would have put Roscommon into the All-Ireland semi-final last year. They would have come second in their group to Dublin. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
So it's not nonsense, hairy-fairy stuff to be thinking that if the ball bounces, that's where Roscommon could be at. Now, there's a fair few bounces of the ball required to get there, but it's not like 6-7 years ago, it would have been outrageous to be talking about Roscommon in quarterfinals, never mind semi-finals. But the show has moved on, and incrementally the team and squad have been improving in terms of personnel. Well, essentially they've everybody back injury-free now, which makes their panel choice very, very decent. Like, they can go down to number 20, 21. There's great depth there. And you're bringing on James Murta with 20 minutes to go, or Kieran Murta, or Donny Smith, or whoever. These are players that have been around a while, very experienced players, very explosive players who can contribute. So that's going to make a big change compared to where things were a few years ago, when injuries were a curse, travel was a curse, and some players not being in the squad were a curse. So that's all those things have tidied themselves up to make the whole focus sharper, and the whole squad effort a stronger effort, a more combined effort, I would say. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Like, Roscommon should now have the tools to be ultra competitive in this championship. The pity for me, really, with the way the squad has developed, is that there isn't a qualifiers stroke Super 8s, because I think Roscommon have the panel now to have a real cut, because there could be a misfortune on the day and it's winner on the day, as you know, and you could fall out of the championship after 1 or 2 matches when there was a run in you, if that makes sense. That, if it was the old situation, you could have recovered. And you feel now that Roscommon are mature enough and have certain abilities around the field to make sure they would be competitive in the old style qualifier Super 8 championship. But look, it is a straight knockout on the day. So Roscommon have to tug and have to perform, as Mayo and Galway will have to as well. And that's the kind of championship wrapped right there, Dara. It's Galway versus Mayo or Roscommon in the final. Any three of them could be in that final. Well, Galway will be in it. Any of the other two could be in it, and any of the three of them could win it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch, all right. Munster then, obviously Cork and Kerry this year are in the semi-final, and you'd imagine Clare or Tipperary will fancy their chances to get to a final with the way the draws worked out. But Cork Kerry is interesting. People are not hyping up Cork, but saying they could possibly take out Kerry on a given day. Comfortable promotion from Division 3. How do you see it panning out?
Well, it's as you know, it's back in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, even though the final was there in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last year. I did that final, and it was an amazing final because Cork weren't rated at all and really tore into them. And there was a couple of minutes where it was slightly in the balance, but only a couple of minutes, and then Kerry took off again. Cork have improved. They have a better structure around their squad, around their backroom team. Cian O'Neill has come in to add a bit of experience and know-how as well. Rhoda McCarthy is a very, very good manager. I have a lot of respect for him. And he's doing it the way he wants to do it, and he's doing it the right way. So, does being Division 3 champions, jump up your confidence levels? Not really. Division 3 is another world, Dara. They've known all along that we're going to get out of Division 3, and we've been able to, and saying to themselves, we can focus on one match alone, Kerry. And that's the game they're focused on. The vibe coming out is they're going to put in an outrageous effort. I'm doing that match again this year, so I'm really looking forward to going to Cork in, I think it's 2 weeks' time. Yeah. And The 8th, is it the 8th? Some the 8th or some of the 7th. And I give, again, it's a bit like Mayo Galway, but not really either. But it has a bit of that, in that Cork can pull something out of the bag. You know, they don't need a 5-year build-up to a Kerry game to get themselves ready for it. Like, it's a huge county, Dara. There's mounted talent. You know, I think someone says over 250 clubs or something. In the place. Could you imagine just getting the player out? I know that's an old cliche I throw out. Imagine if you were just sent in the best player from each club. You have 250 top players straight away. But so I give them a chance, but not a great chance. Like, I do believe Kerry are moving this on to another level in every respect. I think they could have won it last year, the All-Ireland. They were unlucky the first day. They were not unlucky the second day. Dublin took tay with them the second day. But they have improved. They have improved. Like, they have now got Seanie O'Sullivan, Seanie O'Shea at 11, Clifford 15, Gainey 14, Brosnan perhaps in the corner, Moynihan, Stephen O'Brien. Jesus, that's a lot of good forwards straight away. The defence, which has been a worry for them, they've tightened that considerably, and now they're playing half forwards further back and using their speedy wing backs to transition and leaving some of the half forwards behind them. So that's interesting, and we'll see more of it because they did need to tighten it. They wouldn't win a championship with the defence they had, and I think they know that from last year now. So that's looking like perhaps Mayo, Roscommon, Galway versus Kerry in the All-Ireland semi. That'll be my kind of run at it. The other side, it's unfortunate that Tip and Clare drew each other in the quarters, because, you know, a very decent competitive team is going to be done at that stage. And if I'm betting on that, who's at home in that one? Do we know?
I think it's Tip.
Tip, yeah. Well, then I'd probably go with Tip being at home, but I wouldn't rule out Clare either. They're a very dogged team. You saw against Armagh last week. They fight hard for themselves, and they're a credit to their manager, Colm Collins. So yeah, probably Tip, but again, it wouldn't surprise me if Clare turned them over. And so I would like to see Clare get to a Munster final. I think that group deserved to get to a Munster final. Have a day out at it and have a cut at most likely Kerry. Yeah, it will be Kerry.
Yeah, it's probably a pity, like in a normal year, that they, even if they got to the final, they'd be in a round 4 qualifier then, and then they're one game away from Super 8. Yeah. That's kind of the downside of it for the teams that are trying to make breakthroughs, who need the extra games. But it is, as they say, what it is. Yeah, you mentioned Leinster earlier, a bit quick enough, I suppose. It doesn't really need too much talk about. But if you take probably Dublin out of it, it'd be a decent competitive province to watch.
Well, middling decent. If you take Dublin out of it, it still wouldn't be as good as any of the other provinces. I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's populated now with Division 2, 3 and 4 teams. That's where it's at. And the standards in some of the counties is very low. I mean Sligo, Leitrim low, you know. So it is just non-competitive. The great hope has to be that Kildare and Meath will shake themselves. And again, I have a real sense that both are shaking themselves and will continue to do so. They're two very good managers in McEntee and Jack O'Connor. And I know Andy McEntee has a real belief that he can get this Meath group up to real competitive Leinster Championship stuff, and on a given day could take out a Dublin. That's the way he will believe it, and that's the way he has to believe it. And therefore, I am expecting a good Leinster final with Meath and Dublin in it. But am I expecting a shock? No, not this year. Even though it could be. You can't rule these once-off games now. This is back to 2020 or back to 2000 now, Dara. The last ones. That's 20 years ago since we had these. And, you know, I was part of that for a long time. And the amount of shocks that happened every second Sunday when it was knockout. When one team fell out of bed and had it in their head that, Jesus, we're going to do something mighty today. And it just happened. And I've seen positions where Mayo and teams I was at were red hot favourites. And by Sunday evening, we're gone out of the championship. And I've seen it in other provinces. It does happen. So that's going to be a hugely exciting part of the mix. That on any given day, the second ranked teams could take out a top ranked team. That could happen. And if you look at Dublin, they're at their most vulnerable that they've been now in 5 years. The old manager is gone. The best player in the country, Jack McCaffrey, is not available. Jim McConnelly is not there to make decisive inputs, either as a sub or as a starter. The team is getting a year older. Has it the motivation to do 6 and go for 6? It's an incredible group, so probably has. But human nature is human nature. There comes a time when everybody just has enough of everything. That's not to say now they're going to throw in the towel or anything. But there are opportunities there. I mean, that Dublin team that I saw play Galway last Sunday in the league wouldn't frighten anybody. But then when you roll out Mannion and, all these guys, I think I counted 4 or 5, Johnny Cooper, help me here now, there's a few more that I'm missing in my head. The wing forward, Niall Scully wasn't there.
Oh, yeah.
So when you start rolling out that standard of player, yeah, the team does improve. But not impossible. It is not impossible to rule out a shock. And even a shock of the proportion that would knock Dublin out of the championship or Kerry. You can't rule it out. Can't.
Yeah, sure, even from watching the Premier League start this season, it's been probably, people say it's the most wide open in years. Whether that's to do with the crowd, maybe teams just mightn't get to that same intensity with no one there. You just don't know.
Well, I know from my time back in the 80s, one of the toughest aspects of playing Dublin is the crowd. Especially when you get a run on you, and the noise levels ramp up. Now if you're playing well and you're going well, the opposition crowd get a bit quieter, and you can almost take energy from keeping them quiet, if that doesn't sound like a contradiction. But they won't have that crowd behind them. And there is no doubt that crowd, and we've been arguing this for 100 years, that crowd is worth 2-3 points to Dublin every match it plays. They're all congregated essentially, or they're certainly the vocal aspect of their support is congregated on the hill. So you can imagine the 35 minutes that you're playing into the hill as the opposition. It is tougher. That's just the way it is. It is tougher. So that won't be there. So, you take out now Jim Gavin, Jack McCaffrey, Jim McConnelly, the crowd. They haven't had the same build-up as they would normally have. It's week-on-week championship. They're going to come out of a weakened Leinster championship to play a very hardened Ulster champion. Yeah, there's lots of reasons to think it may not go exactly to plan, or exactly how the majority of people might think.
Yeah, just to wrap up, a few people sent in questions just to finish it up.
Sure.
One person said, just the Mayo goalkeeping situation, who would you have in? Obviously, it's been talked about probably for 10 years now. It's always been David Clark and Robbie Henley, and it's always been nearly chopping and changing one game to another. As you said earlier, David Clark probably would be disappointed with the 2 goals he let in from McKenna. Who would you start?
Well, see, it's a bigger argument than that, really, Dara. It's a bigger debate. And I was very interested. I was following a tweet from Shane Kern there late last week, that was just throwing out there, how good are Gaelic goalkeepers? And are we overhyping them? When people say, well, they're all good shot stoppers, the difference now is the kick out. Well, I think Shane's hypothesis is they're not all good shot stoppers. In fact, in the basic business, which is shot stopping, some of them are damn average. And he was talking about the amount of goalkeeping coaching and how good it is that's going, like, is it as good as people are saying? Because some of the goalkeepers that are emerging don't have those top skills. And also that a lot of them are a function of the soccer background and soccer goalkeeping coaching background as well, which is not to cast any aspersions on those coaches or the coach. What I'm saying is that a good fit for a Gaelic football goalkeeper? Because I'm told it's quite a different discipline in terms of getting set for the shot. You know, the standard, you know, a goalkeeper gets set as you're advancing in goal. As a friend of mine who's a very good goalkeeping coach himself was telling me, remember, in soccer, the ball is on the floor when you get set. In Gaelic, it's up at your pouch. It's in your hand generally as you get set. So the trajectory and everything is quite different. And where the contact with the ball is made is very different. So there's a completely different technical side to the, which I don't understand now. I'm first out to say it. And then definitely, if I had a good researcher beside me that could tell me how many goals have been given away this year by kickouts by goalkeepers in round 6 and round 7 of the league, I'd have a hat full of them. Yeah, the David Clark one, very recent. Who did I see? Another one. The Fermanagh goalie at the weekend.
Yeah,
they're in a great position. Gives the ball straight to the leash lad. Now they're just the ones I remember. I know this happened in loads of games where fellas are chipping them out, and we don't remember that they're scoring points, not goals. It's goals that tend to end up on a camera or something, but the points don't. But again, I would argue there's a lot of scores been given away by poor kickouts. These short kickouts that are going all over the shop. And I include the top goalies right down to the bottom goalies. I saw Blaine Hughes at the weekend playing for Armagh. He has now mastered kicking it out with both feet. Okay, so you can go left or right. He has a left foot and a right foot. I didn't think he had a left foot prior to this. So he's moving it on a bit. Now, that gets me back to the Mayo question. And the Mayo question is this. The tragedy is that after 10 years, essentially, it's the same two goalkeepers. And that's not making any comment about the two lads. It's that nobody else has either mixed it up or challenged them or been good enough to challenge them. Now, how could that be? You'd imagine. Because there are limits. Both goalkeepers are outstanding keepers. That they may both be all-stars, I think. And yet, they both have aspects to their game that are not fully teased out, that they have not perfected. And that's fairly obvious. And so why has there not been a third? So it's impossible for me from this distance to say David Clark is better than young Henley or vice versa. You know, I wouldn't know the fine detail of it. But what as a Mayo supporter or Mayo fan, you're looking in over the fence saying, why has it come to this? You know, why have we not someone else now maybe there's a good reason for that. Maybe there is nobody else in the mix. But I was thinking of young Schlingerman that plays for, well, he's not young anymore now. I suppose he's in his mid-20s at this stage. Remember, he was the minor goalie. Doesn't he play League of Ireland for some club?
Yeah.
I'm not
he
following
played anyways for a good while, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Who does he play for? Rovers? It's like Rovers, is it? Or?
He used to play for them. I think he's not there anymore. Yeah.
Well, I think he's around the scene still. Now, was he good enough to tempt, you know, back into the Mayo scene and see could that do anything with it? And then the argument where they're bringing a lot of outfield players back into goal, you know, because they don't see the goalkeeping situation as critical in terms of shot stopping. Well, it is critical in terms of shot stopping. Like a lot of the efforts that were made by goalkeepers to stop shots in Gaelic football are downright poor. I mean, there were some efforts made by the Galway goalie in some of these league matches to shot stops at close contact who are very, very average. Very average. And, you know, I mentioned the David Clark one on Conor McKenna. You know, now he's better than that. So he must have just got caught or it was a lapse. He's brilliant. He's probably the number one shot stopper in the country, I would say. But sometimes Cluxton's shot stopping isn't as good as people might think it to be. And so on and so on. So there's a whole world out there regarding the goalkeeping aspect, because it's such a critical part of the modern game. And there's so much attention been given to it with the kickouts and the restarts, whatever you want to call them, and then the pressure that's put on the goalies, because he's now seen as probably the key player on the team. Certainly, wouldn't you agree that Stephen Cluxton is Dublin's number one player, and hasn't Stephen Cluxton changed the nature of Gaelic football and the whole way we all approach it now in the last 20 years? I think you would. So it is a very, very important position, but the pressure now that goes with it is savage. And there's so much scrutiny around it, and mistakes and errors, and how many kickouts you're getting away. And, sometimes it's not your fault that they're not being caught out in the middle of the field. You could be kicking them out very nicely, but the fella at the other end is letting you down. So, yeah, it's a funny one for Mayo, because they're back now to where they've always been for the last 6 years. They don't know which, stick or twist.
Another one will be, should the clubs have more time with players after success this year?
Well, that's a kind of, the answer to that is yes, but hang on a second now. Didn't we agree the championship was going on 4 weeks later? So, what do you want to do? You've only 4 weeks. So do you want to stay with the club for 3 weeks and go on the beer or something, and then throttle off to county football a week for the championship? That's not going to get the job done. I thought the club championships were outstanding. I thought they produced a lot of really, really good football. And what we did learn is, never mind about whether they can stay with the club afterwards, is that if they stay with the club during, it's going to add to it. So I think we found
that was the question. It was the club should get more time, say, with the county players in the year.
I thought the way you worded it, you was talking about after the win it.
No.
I misinterpreted that question. I thought you were saying should have been out there around to celebrate. Well, absolutely agree with the question. If that's the position he's taking, which I think it is, that the split season was road tested. We got a free road test this year that we'd have never got otherwise, if the pandemic hadn't hit. And it is absolutely proven now to be a resounding success. But then, like, most people knew this, Darren. Like, this is not an amazing conclusion. Like, a lot of people felt there had to be a sense of breaking up the seasons. So, I don't want to be wise after the event, but, this is what a lot of people wanted and now have got. So the pressure now is on the GAA to make sure it's captured when they sit down to draw the schedule out from a blank canvas. And I've no doubt they will go with this, whether it's before the county game or after the county season. I think before it is the best. And I think that will work very well. It was a very, very high standard championships all across the country, because the players were not worn out and bet to death from coming back from the county, but also because they were around to be part of the whole club championship season and training with their buddies, having a lot of fun. The same pressures weren't there. You can hang out a bit more. It was a strange year anyway, in that lots of players had a lot more time. And of course, the big thing was there was no travel. So all the clubs and all the counties have their full pick. So, Darragh O'Connor and 10 of his buddies are not gone to San Francisco and not coming back until a week before the first round of the championship. So that was a great part of it. And yeah, I've no doubt that will be captured in the new plan, but that probably won't get into being now till 2022, probably, when we get back perhaps to some normality.
And then the last two, who would you say is the best player in the country currently?
I did a piece very recently for the Irish Times, which I think is coming out Saturday, and that question was thrown out there. And the people that went into the mix immediately were Brian Fenton, David Clifford, Aidan O'Shea, and I'm talking now, this piece was done 2-3 weeks ago, so I wasn't being wise before any of the league matches were played. And I had watched Aidan O'Shea very carefully in the Mayo Championship. I think I saw all his games. And I just feel he's playing, I saw him live twice, and he was just playing unbelievable football. So I went for him. I think, he is unmarkable. But the problem is, Mayo don't have a lot more to feed off him. If they had, he would become unbelievably unmarkable, because then, they wouldn't be able to afford to double and treble team him all the time, because he'd have other players he could throw the ball off to. So the hope is that they can spare him at 14 and they stick to their guns on that, because that's where he can play. I don't think he has the engine to play 8 or any of those higher positions, 11, or play in the pocket as a sweeper or any of those things. I don't think he has the athleticism to do that. He's a big, big man, so he wears down quick. That's just the nature, because of the bulk he's carrying. But he has a beautiful touch, beautiful feet. He is the softest of hands for a big fella. And he's very unselfish. He should have got a ball back from Darren Cohen last Sunday that he'd have stuck in the net, and now Mayo would be in Division 1. So these are the things that worry me about Mayo. But anyway, I'm drifting off a little bit. Aidan O'Shea, David Clifford, Brian Fenton, cigarette paper between them. But right now, I think O'Shea has every right to be seen as the best player in the country in an overall influence. But Fenton and Clifford are. Fenton last week against Galway was savage, and Clifford every week is savage too. So they're great players, great players.
And then finally, I suppose it's an easy one and a hard one at the same time. Who's your prediction? I think you mentioned Kerry to win the All Ireland earlier. You going to stick with that?
Yeah, I will stick with that. I think they're nailed down to win Munster. So from you wouldn't get any decent odds for them to win Munster. They're playing Connacht in the semi-final, and I don't care who emerges, they won't have the beatings of Kerry. So Kerry are in the final. And once you're in the final, you have a toss-up. And they'll be meeting Dublin or Donegal most likely. Could be Dublin Tyrone, Dublin Armagh, but most likely Dublin. And I think they have their number. And in the semi-final will be a perfect place for Kerry to do that. And in a final, would be a perfect place for Kerry to do that. They will be hurting badly from last year and the fact that Dublin got the 5, especially after the draw match, which they feel they left behind them. So yeah, it couldn't be an unbelievable All-Ireland final on Saturday the 19th under lights in Croke Park, Dublin against Kerry. Unfortunately, an empty stadium it looks very much like. But still, it would have its appeal, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, not obviously I prefer Roscommon to be in it, but a Dublin Kerry final doesn't sound too bad, anyways.
Yeah, I think Roscommon to be in it would be pushing it, but I think the realistic ambition for the Rossies is to kind of break that glass ceiling now and get into a semi-final. I think that's there. Whether it's there this year or not remains to be seen. There's a great chance. Of it. But I think as you go into next year, and if they can keep the squad together, there's no lads going away anywhere. And then you're back to an old structure with maybe Super 8s and qualifiers. I think that would suit the likes of Roscommon to get to a semi-final.
Yeah, well, we're all looking forward to it. Kevin, thanks very much for coming on.
Not at all, Dara. My pleasure. And enjoy the championship. And I'll see you on the highways and byways.